The Newsday continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. The International Monetary Fund sees lower economic expansion for the Philippines next year. IMF mission head to the Philippines, Shanaka J. Peiris, said the country's GDP may slow down between 5.5 and 6% in 2024. The lower end of the forecast is below the IMF's previous growth projection of 5.8%. The latest IMF forecast is also below the government's 6.5 to 8% target for 2024. The economy grew 6.4% in the first quarter of this year, the slowest in 2 years. Peiris explained that the base effects next year will be a bit more challenging following a very strong growth in the entire 2023. He added that weaker external demand is expected due to the looming recession in the US and Europe. For this year, the IMF kept its 6% growth forecast for the Philippines. The government looks to launch a retail dollar bond offering worth 2 billion pesos in the third quarter of 2023. The country's last retail dollar bond sale was in 2021 when it raised almost $1.6 billion of nearly 81 billion pesos. According to National Treasurer Rosalia De Leon, the government will market the retail dollar bonds to overseas Filipinos through multiple platforms such as the Land Bank mobile app and selling agents. To make it easier to buy the bonds, De Leon said they are also trying to get some banks to waive fees for opening dollar accounts. The Bangko Sentral is widely expected to maintain the key benchmark interest rate at 6.25% on Thursday. According to a poll by Business World, 13 out of 18 analysts anticipate the Monetary Board to pause its tightening cycle at its May 18 meeting. If realized, this would be the first time the central bank will leave interest rates untouched since May 2022. According to most analysts, the BSP has done enough to tame inflation, which has decelerated since its 8.7% peak in January. The analysts also believe that a slowdown in the country's economic growth strengthens the case for the BSP to pause tightening. President Bongbong Marcos led the signing of the Renewal Agreement of Service Contract Number 38 or the Malampaya Gas Field Concession. The President witnessed the signing of the renewal agreement in a ceremony at the Malacanang Palace this morning ahead of its impending expiration in 2024. The deal has been renewed for a final 15 years. According to the Energy Department, extending the concession until February 22, 2039 will ensure that the remaining gas reserves are further explored and utilized. The DOE also says the discovery of additional reserves will boost the country's quest for energy security. Business World earlier reported that Prime Infrastructure Capital Incorporated, whose subsidiary is a member of the Malampaya Consortium operating SC38, sought the 15-year extension for the concession. Prime Infra initially said it was optimistic about the Malampaya gas field and expects to extract gas from a new well by 2026. The Malampaya project, which began operations in 2001, has produced natural gas and supplied it to 5 power plants in Luzon, which account for 20% of the country's power requirement. Heads up, motorists, you might want to fill up your tanks a little early, as oil companies will implement price hikes this week. Effective tomorrow, May 16th, diesel prices will be more expensive by 1 peso and 40 centavos per liter. Gasoline prices, on the other hand, will see an increase of 35 centavos per liter, while kerosene prices will have an upward adjustment of 1 peso and 20 centavos per liter. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. The Marcos Jr. administration seeks a 9.2% increase for next year's national budget. In a memorandum, the Budget Department disclosed that the proposed 2024 budget has been set at 5.75 trillion pesos. The agency said the spending plan includes carryover items from previous years. The DBM vowed to continue its efforts for revenue growth, including the value-added tax on digital service providers. It also intends to keep infrastructure investment a medium-term priority. The proposed 2024 national budget is due to be submitted to Congress for deliberations by July 24. As onion prices begin to rise again, the Agriculture Department says it is not ruling out the possibility of hoarders taking advantage of limited supply. According to the agency's monitoring, prices of onions have reached 200 pesos per kilo in some markets. The DA says retail prices should not exceed 160 pesos, as onions only go as high as 120 pesos per kilo at Farmgate. The DA also notes that even if onion supplies did go through cold storage, prices should not be as high as they are.
Kung meron man na pumupunta na sa cold storage tapos pumupunta sa palengke, hindi pa rin po ganun kalaki ang cost kasi hindi pa naman ganun katagal na nasa cold storage. Kasi syempre, when you put it in the cold storage, you factor in yung gastos mo on a monthly basis.
The increase in prices comes as local supply of red onions are seen to only last until November, while the supply of white onions will only last until September. The Agriculture Department says it is now considering the importation of onions to prevent another shortage. The DA also assures it will examine the entire value chain to trace where the price increases are coming from.
When we talk of viajero, it's basically the trader. So marami pong layers yan, ano? Nandyan na yung ahente, nandyan na yung first layer trader. Marami pong mga nakalahok as when you mention viajero. So hindi pa po natutukoy kung sino po doon, pero buong value chain po ang dapat tingnan para presyo po ay tama.
The flow of Russian oil continues through mystery traders and aging ships, ringing alarms about safety and environmental concerns. Bloomberg Quick Take explains the post-sanctions reality.
These are all the ships in the world. These are all the oil tankers. And here are two ships, Catalina 7 and Amber 6, that are transferring 730,000 barrels of Russian oil 40 miles east off the northern tip of Morocco. But this image is not just about the transfer of oil. It represents a new network of intermediaries and vessel owners that are redefining Russia's oil supply chains, often using tankers that are considered unsafe or candidates for demolition. Here's Bloomberg's Alaric Nightingale on what he found in his reporting.
These vessels are really important to Moscow because of G7 sanctions that ban the import of almost all seaborne oil from Russia. While the impact of the sanctions is debatable, what's beyond any doubt is that the transport of Russian oil has become increasingly unsafe. At least a third of these vessels don't have known insurance. If you were to have an oil spill or a collision with another ship, it's not clear who would pay out. And it's something that the International Maritime Organization has expressed concern about.
So you tracked specific locations to understand this oil trade, and what did you find?
So we found that more than 40 million barrels of Russian oil have been switched between tankers near Ceuta in Spain, in a bay in southern Greece, and in other high seas locations. From there, it's getting transported to Asia, mostly to China and India. We also see that shipments from Russian ports have jumped by almost 20% in the first quarter of this year compared with the same period in 2022. And much of that trade has been handled from places like Dubai and Hong Kong, which have really emerged as large trading hubs for Russian petroleum since the sanctions ratcheted up against Moscow.
So why is this new trade so concerning?
The thing is with this trade is that the spread between the export price of Russian oil and the import price of Russian oil has grown to be absolutely huge, at about $16 a barrel on average in April. Somebody's making a fortune. You know, you're talking about $10 tens of millions of barrels getting shipped every month. What that means is we don't know where the money's going. Is it going to Russia-affiliated firms? Is it going to non-Russian-affiliated firms? That says a lot about the effectiveness of the sanctions. Beyond that, there is also the issue of environmental concerns because of the way this trade has developed.
And that's it for this hour. Join us again at 2 p.m. I'm Jago Castro. We are One News, all sides, all the time.